Hi, this is George Sicalius, and this is my assignment one overview. I'm going to start with question one. So this is the shape. What I did is I hard-coded in all of the vertices, um, labeled them to help me out. I then had to resize the byte width to account for the size of the array of vertices. I also had to change the indices in order to draw all of the triangles. I think I had 8 triangles total. Yeah. I also had to change the byte width for this to account for the all of the triangles. And then last thing I had to change was the draw index to also be sized properly to draw all the triangles. Um, so yeah, that's question one. Question two. Did I break it? I can't remember. No, okay. So then if I change the number of vertices, let's do 12. Any day now, okay. Okay, and there should be 12 vertices. Yeah, okay. All right. So instead of hard coding them in to do this, so I had to determine the angle between each of the vertices. I then used that angle and incremented through the number of vertices. So I used the cosine for my x, sine for my y in order to determine their position. This doesn't need to be 1, actually. This should be 0. I was just testing some stuff. So, oh, I also had to resize where is it? Here, okay. Resize the byte width to account for the number of vertices. Then had to create the array of indices. This basically achieves this effect. So 0, the first vertex, would be the rightmost vertex. And then everything basically used that to wind itself in this order. And this basically does that. So yeah, resize the byte width before sending it. And then updating draw index to account for the number of triangles. So yeah, those are the questions. For the further work, I did experiment with the z depth. So what I found was, as long as it exists in between 1 and 0, then it'll draw it for the z-axis. But if it exceeds 1, then it'll call the point, and anything that has a z value greater than 1. So yeah. What else? Oh yeah, I also tried changing the max depth to see if that affected anything. What I found was if the max depth was greater than, the max depth can only be in between 1 and 0. If it's less than 1, it'll call anything that's greater than it. Um, if it's greater than 1, then the system will basically just crash. Um, so yeah. So changing the viewport, changing the viewport. So what I found was the viewport takes up, I want to say it's pixel measurements. Yeah. Okay. So one benefit of being able to move the viewport around is that you can have things that exist outside the viewport initially, but you can move the camera accordingly. So we can basically create the illusion of having a camera by manipulating these values. At least for a 2D setting. I feel like a 3D setting would be a bit more complicated and might call for some extra stuff. I think the last thing was the DXGI formats. Yeah, so like DXGI format. So if I remember correctly from the readings, these formats are typically used for textures. Um, Specifically like the colors of textures and that stuff, hence like the red 16, and I think there is another one suggested. Yeah, like R8, G8, B8, like A8, like those being it can be either red, green, blue, or alpha. Um, and then the number following the color is the size of the buffer for each component, or like, no, not the size of each buffer, but the size of each container within the buffer, or something like that. Um, and then uint, this just means unsigned int, so this format, it'll only take uints. And so this format is used to read the index buffer. Although there's a color, red 16, we don't necessarily have to use it as a color. We can just use this format to pass in the array of indices to the GPU. Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's it. um, yeah.